Millions of seniors are being scammed, but hardly anyone hears about it, not because it isn't happening, but because of one powerful, painful emotion: shame. In this video, we explore the hidden emotional cost of elder fraud and why so many older adults suffer in silence instead of speaking up. This is the truth no one talks about, but every family needs to hear. They didn't just steal my money, they stole my confidence, and I didn't tell a soul. That's the quiet echo behind millions of elder fraud cases every year. Because elder scams aren't just financial crimes. They're deeply personal. They leave behind guilt, embarrassment, and shame so heavy that many older adults choose to carry the burden alone rather than admit what happened. Right now, elder fraud is one of the fastest growing crimes in the world. From fake Medicare calls to romance scams, from phishing emails to financial helpers who aren't what they seem, seniors are being targeted every day. But you wouldn't always know it, not because it isn't happening, but because so few people talk about it. Why? Because shame has a way of silencing even the strongest voices. It makes good, intelligent people feel foolish. It turns victims into self-blamers. It tells them, you should have known better. And so they stay quiet, they withdraw. They avoid telling their children, their friends, even their banks. The emotional toll can be devastating, sometimes far more than the financial loss itself. This video isn't just about warning signs or scam tactics. It's about the hidden cost, the emotional scar that no one sees, but that so many carry. It's about understanding why older adults don't speak up and what families and communities can do to create safe, shame-free spaces for healing, reporting, and rebuilding. Because staying silent doesn't keep us safe. Speaking up does. And the first step in ending elder fraud is ending the shame around it. Elder fraud isn't rare. It's not a one-in-a-million story. It's happening every day in every community to people who never thought it would happen to them. More than 3.5 million older adults in the U.S. fall victim to scams each year, but only a small fraction ever report what happened. The rest? They stay silent. They try to move on, or worse, they carry the weight in secret, believing it was somehow their fault. But it's not. These aren't random attacks. They are deliberate, calculated acts, and they are rising faster than most people realize. Scammers target older adults for a reason. They know seniors tend to be more trusting. They understand that loneliness is common and that some people over 60 may live alone, rely on the phone for connection, or have cognitive changes that make them more vulnerable to pressure, urgency, or manipulation. And the scams themselves? They're not always easy to spot because they're designed to sound familiar, reassuring, even helpful. Tech support scams often start with a simple pop-up on your screen or a phone call claiming your device has a virus. The voice is calm, professional. Let us fix it for you. All they need is remote access or your credit card. Government impersonation scams might sound like a call from the IRS, Medicare, or Social Security. There's a problem with your account. You'll lose your benefits if you don't respond. The fear sets in. And that's when the scammer strikes. Romance scams are perhaps the most emotionally cruel. Someone reaches out, sweet, thoughtful, kind. It starts with conversation and turns into companionship, and then, little by little, they ask for help. Money for a flight, a family emergency, a medical bill. All a lie. But the connection feels real because it was designed to. Then there are family or emergency scams. The ones where someone calls pretending to be your grandchild, your nephew, or a loved one in danger. They're crying, they're panicked. Don't tell anyone, they say. I need money right away. And in that moment, any of us would want to help. This is how it happens. Not because seniors are careless, but because they're caring. Because they want to do the right thing. Because they've spent their whole lives helping others, and now someone has turned that against them. What's worse is that many don't realize they've been scammed until it's too late, or they're too ashamed to say anything once they do. Elder fraud isn't just about theft. It's about betrayal, it's about manipulation, it's about isolating someone in a moment of confusion panic, or hope, and taking something they can't always get back. And the more we talk about it, the less power these scammers hold. Because the truth is, this happens to smart people, loving people, thoughtful people, people just like you or someone you care about. So if it's happened to you, you're not alone. And if it hasn't, it's still worth knowing the signs, because someone you love could be next. Silence protects scammers, but sharing protects each other. And that's how we start to change this. One of the most heartbreaking things about elder fraud isn't just the scam itself. It's what happens afterward, the silence. So many older adults, even after losing money, never tell anyone what happened. Not their children, not their friends, not the authorities, and not because they don't want help, but because of something deeper, something far more powerful than we tend to realize. Shame. It's a quiet, heavy feeling that settles in the chest and says, you should have known better. Shame doesn't just whisper that you made a mistake. It screams that you are the mistake. And for many seniors, especially those who have spent their entire lives being providers, decision makers, and protectors, it's devastating. There's a fear of being seen as foolish, as incapable, of losing the respect of loved ones, of being doubted, or worse, being told they can no longer manage their own money, their own choices, their own life. Because to admit you were scammed, for many, feels like admitting weakness. The irony is that most elder fraud victims are not naive. They are thoughtful, intelligent, experienced people. But scammers are experts at what they do. They use urgency, flattery, fear, and isolation to override logic. They prey on trust. And they know exactly how to make their lies feel real. But the shame that follows, that's what sticks. It makes people withdraw. They don't want to be pitied. They don't want their children to worry or take over their finances. They don't want to be seen differently. So they sit with it, quietly, alone. And yet, it's that silence that scammers are counting on. Because if no one talks, no one warns others, no one reports it, no one learns from it, and the cycle continues behind closed doors and polite smiles. Shame convinces victims to protect the very people who hurt them. But here's what needs to be said out loud. Being scammed does not make you stupid. It makes you human. You were targeted, manipulated, tricked by someone who made it their job to deceive, and they're good at it. Not because you're weak, but because they're practiced. If you've been scammed, you don't need to feel ashamed. You need to feel supported. Because the moment you speak up, that weight starts to lift. You take back control, not just of your money, but of your dignity. You create space for healing. You allow others to step in and help, not to take over, but to stand beside you. And you give other people permission to speak up too. There's power in saying, "It happened to me," because it helps someone else realize they're not alone. And it reminds you that a mistake doesn't define your worth. The scam was the thief. Don't let shame be the jailer. It's time to start talking with someone you trust, with a support group, with your family. Because healing doesn't start with pretending nothing happened. It starts with saying, I didn't deserve this, and I'm not staying silent anymore. Silence may feel like safety, but in the wake of elder fraud, silence often becomes the most dangerous part of all. When a scam happens, the immediate instinct for many seniors is to keep it quiet, to sit with it, to try to forget. But while that silence might feel like protection, it comes at a cost, one that's heavier than most people realize. When fraud goes unreported, scammers win. They continue their schemes without consequence, targeting more seniors using the same lies, the same tactics, because no one stood up to stop them, not because they couldn't, but because shame convinced them not to. This is how elder fraud becomes a cycle, not because people aren't smart, but because they've been silenced by fear, by embarrassment, or by a lifetime of believing they're supposed to have all the answers. But here's the truth. Staying silent doesn't undo what happened. It just deepens the damage. The longer the silence lingers, the harder it is to recover, financially and emotionally. Money may be gone, but what lingers is the broken trust. Trust in others. Trust in the world. And maybe hardest of all, trust in yourself. You start to question every decision. You second-guess every call, every message, every conversation. You wonder if you're slipping, if others will start to doubt you too. So you pull back, you stop answering the phone, you avoid social events, you withdraw from routines that used to bring you joy, all because you don't want to face the moment when someone might ask, "Are you okay?" and you don't know how to answer honestly. This isolation, the kind that slowly builds over time, is one of the most damaging effects of elder fraud. Because it's quiet, it's invisible, but it's powerful. And it steals more than money. It steals connection. And when connection is gone, loneliness grows, anxiety creeps in, depression follows, all from a single moment that was never meant to define you, but now shadows everything. That's the dangerous cost of silence. Because the moment a senior withdraws is the moment the scammer wins twice. But it doesn't have to be that way. When someone speaks up, even if it's just to one person, that silence begins to break. When a story is shared, a shame is lifted. When a report is made, even if no money is recovered, something far more valuable is reclaimed. Power. Power over your own life. Power over your next decision. Power to help someone else who hasn't been scammed yet, but might be next. Scammers don't just want your money, they want your silence. But your voice, your truth, that's where their game ends. So speak, even if your voice shakes. Tell someone you trust. Call your bank. File a report. Start the process. Because every time one person stands up, the wall of silence gets a little weaker, and the path to healing gets a little clearer. You didn't deserve to be targeted, but you do deserve to be heard. And your story may be exactly what someone else needs to finally speak up to. It takes courage to speak, especially when you've been hurt. After a scam, the silence can feel suffocating. You replay the call, the email, the message over and over again. You wonder how it happened. You wonder how you missed it. And most of all, you wonder what people will say if they find out. But here's something no one says often enough. Talking about it isn't weakness, it's bravery. When you break the silence, you don't just help yourself, you help others. Because every story shared is a warning flare for someone else. Every report made is a barrier that makes it harder for scammers to move forward. And every voice raised reminds others that being a victim of fraud doesn't mean you're foolish. It means you were targeted by someone trained to deceive. Scammers aren't lucky, they're deliberate. They know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to keep you from pausing long enough to question it. They're not playing by accident, they're playing by a script, and that script is designed to silence you even after the money is gone. But when you speak up, you flip that script. You say, "No more," and you start a ripple. You might report a scam that helps authorities find a pattern. You might call your bank just in time for them to freeze an account or stop a wire. You might share your story with a friend or a senior center group and prevent someone else from falling into the same trap. And even if you never recover a cent, you recover something just as important: your voice, your dignity, your control. That's what makes speaking up an act of strength. There's this myth that once you've been scammed, your credibility is gone. But the truth is, most people will admire you more for your honesty than for pretending nothing happened. Because what you're doing isn't just about justice, it's about healing. It's about saying, "This happened to me, and I'm still here, I'm still capable, I still have value." And that statement in itself is powerful. If you've been scammed, tell someone. Tell your doctor. Tell your family. Tell your local law enforcement or your bank. If you don't feel ready to talk in person, write it down. Call a senior hotline. Report it anonymously, but take that first step. Because that step isn't just about stopping a scammer. It's about refusing to carry the weight alone. It's about standing in the light instead of hiding in the shame. And every time you share, every time you raise your voice, you make it safer for the next person to do the same. Scammers count on silence. But when one person speaks, that silence begins to break. You are not the scam. You are not the shame. You are the survivor. And the moment you speak is the moment you start to reclaim your peace. When someone you love has been scammed, it's easy to want to fix it, to jump in, to figure out what went wrong. But before any of that, what they need most isn't a solution. They need a safe space. Because if they've stayed silent, it's not because they didn't care. It's because they were carrying something too heavy to share. Something that felt like shame, like failure, like fear of being judged. And the moment we respond with blame, with frustration, or even just with "why didn't you tell me?" we close the door they just tried to open. The most powerful thing a loved one can do in that moment is simple. Listen. Not correct, not lecture, just listen. Let them speak without interruption. Let the story come out the way it needs to. Let them feel seen, not as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who is targeted and hurt. And if you're not sure how to start the conversation, begin softly. Not with, "Did you fall for a scam?" but with something like, "Have you ever gotten a call or email that felt off?" or "I heard scams are getting trickier lately. Has anything like that ever happened to you?" You're not accusing, you're inviting. Because when you make it safe to share, that's when the truth comes out. Talking about scams shouldn't be a taboo topic. It should be like talking about blood pressure or joint pain, something we check in on regularly with care, not shame. Normalize it at the dinner table, in the car, during a phone call. Share a news story you read. Mention something that happened to a friend. Use it as a way to say, "This can happen to anyone, and if it ever happens to you, I'll never be mad. I'll be here." That single promise can make all the difference. Because when someone knows they won't be blamed, they're more likely to speak up, and when they speak up, they get help faster. They feel less alone. They start to reclaim control. And that's what matters. If you find out your parent, your spouse, your friend has been scammed, respond with empathy. Say, "I'm so sorry this happened to you." Say, "We'll handle this together." You're not just helping them recover financially, you're helping them recover emotionally. Because the hardest part of being scammed isn't always the money lost. It's the dignity lost, the confidence shaken, the silence that followed. And your job isn't to fix that alone, but to be the steady hand that says, "You're still smart, you're still capable, you are not broken." And when we do that for the people we love, we don't just protect them from scams, we protect them from shame. And that's a gift no scammer can ever take away. Being scammed doesn't make you foolish, and it certainly doesn't make you weak. It means someone, often a stranger, studied how to manipulate trust, and they found a way in. They didn't earn that trust, they exploited it. But here's what they couldn't take: your dignity. That still belongs to you, even after the money, even after the silence, even after the shame. You are still wise, still capable, still valuable. Because fraud doesn't just steal dollars, it steals peace of mind, confidence, connection. And for many, it creates a wall of silence that feels safer than facing the truth. But silence has its own cost. It keeps wounds from healing. It keeps justice from being served. And maybe hardest of all, it keeps others walking into the same traps, unaware that someone they love has already been there. You don't have to tell the whole world. You just have to tell someone. A family member, a trusted friend, a bank manager, a hotline. Not to be rescued, but to be heard. Because being heard is how healing starts. And when you speak up, you don't just take back your voice, you give someone else the strength to find theirs. This happens more than most people know, and too many suffer in silence because they think they're the only one, but you are not alone. And your story? It's not just a story of what went wrong. It's a story of resilience, of reclaiming power, of choosing to be part of the solution. Fraud steals more than money. but silence steals your chance to heal. So speak, share, be heard, because your voice might just protect someone else. And that is a legacy no scammer can ever erase. If this video resonated with you or reminded you of someone you care about, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Start a conversation. Ask someone gently, have you ever gotten a call or message that didn't feel right? Because the more we talk about this, the less power shame has, and the more protection we create for the people we love. And if you've been through it yourself, remember, you are not the scam. You are not the mistake. You are the person who's still here, still learning, still worthy of trust, including your own. If you found comfort or courage in this message, subscribe for more stories and support for aging with dignity, honesty, and strength. You're not alone, and your voice matters more than you know.